All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Newsome from Cedartown PD in Georgia, 35 years in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Newsome. Thank you so much for
Well, I'm glad to be here. Words to the wise. I'm looking over my shoulder, wondering who's going to be doing this podcast. I don't consider myself to be the reservoir of wisdom, but for some reason you wanted to talk to me, so here we are.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And really, to be honest, I think the beauty of this is different perspectives, and you've
Yeah,
been in this career a long time, and I know you've lived through it for the last 35 years, and you have your own unique perspectives to share. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with our listeners. So thank you for
I am as
being here
well.
today. Um, so you started when you were 18 years old
I did.
in the jails. Can you give us a little bit of background? What made you want to start when you were 18 years old into this career path, and what did the last 35 years look like for you?
Well, I was one of those people that had you asked me when I was 7 or 8 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? Police officer.
Mm,
There was just never any negotiation within myself. I'm a second generation police officer. Maybe my dad made a great impact on me. I suppose if a man's got a hero, he's mine. And right now he's still teaching me because he's teaching me how to be a senior adult and face that season of life.
mm.
So there was never any doubt. And I knew I wanted to work here in some capacity, not far away from here. And so that was just the step one.
I love that. I love that sentiment that if you were to have a hero, he is it.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that was there anything that he taught you early on about the job that really stuck with you?
Not so much in a lesson that he knew that he was teaching,
Mm,
uh, but lessons he taught that I learned by observation, simply that, and one that you and I've talked about that we want to get into today, which is when you're at work, be all in. But when you're at home, be all in there.
mm.
Uh, his retirement and the realities of the end of a career really made a great impact on me. And so, yeah, he taught me a lot. One of the things that he did verbalize was the guy that was the commanding officer where I worked at the time. Uh, was a guy that my dad had great trust in his capacity to be my professional mentor. And so my dad said, you go out there and work and you let Bobby Sparks be your career mentor and let me be dad. And so
Mm.
while we were both from 1990 when I started till 2003 when he retired, we were both in the same county, but never at the same agency. Unless we wound up on the same call together as police officers, he was dad, and my law enforcement mentor was somebody else.
How special is that? Like that actually got me a little emotional. I love that he's like, I'm dad. Like that's the role that I want to be in your life. And I know in speaking to you offline, and of course we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I know that that's really important to you. That you are dad when you're home, that like you are husband, you are dad, you are focusing on your work life, or excuse me, your
Yeah.
home life when you're home and your work life when you're at work. And for him to have that separation and be like, you know what? Like, I am your dad, and I trust this person to shape you into the officer that you are or the leader that you are. I think that that's so special. And I love that he taught you work ethic, but also life prioritization, because that's what I heard. It's like work really hard, but also prioritize the things that matter in your life.
Yeah. And a lot of the people that are watching this are in that position, not from the protege but from the mentor standpoint. So,
Mhm.
what season of life am I in? My son, I've got two grown kids. Neither of them are in law enforcement. But if they were, then I'm the person that needs to be watching that and remembering, okay, what do I want the most important relationship to be, that he and I are both police officers, or that he's my son?
Mm,
Which relationship is going to be the one that sustains me if the Lord lets me live to be 80? Well, it's not going to be that we both wore a badge. So, and certainly not to minimize it. My career is precious to me, and what I do, there's meaning in it. I enjoy it. I wouldn't still be here doing it every day if I didn't still enjoy it. But it's not the thing that's going to sustain me at the end.
yeah, I really like that because, I started this podcast because I was always having these conversations where I was hearing these I wish statements all the time. And I think that no matter what, we're always going to get to the end of this life and maybe have a few of those. Like, man,
Sure.
I wish I would have done this differently. Or, no one is just going to get to the end of their life and be like, yep, everything was perfect and easy.
Nailed it
Like,
all.
yeah,
I got
nailed
it
it.
all right. No,
But one of the main things I was hearing in these I wish statements, it was always family related. Almost always. And sometimes it was physical. It was like, man, my back, my shoulders, whatever. But a lot of it was like, man, I wish that I would have prioritized my family more. I wish I would have been around more. I wish that I would have been more present. I wish, and if I had, maybe it would have saved my marriage, or maybe I would have a better relationship with my kids. And I think it's a testament, and to anyone who's listening, who's maybe earlier in their career, to learn from those I wish statements and to recognize that there are a lot of people who didn't do that, who didn't prioritize their family and their home life. And they get to the end of this career and they're like, dang it, I really should have done that. And that ends up being a regret in their life. And I know you married your high school sweetheart
correct.
and you're still together today.
We celebrated 30 years in June.
Wow, that's amazing. What's the secret?
Uh, there, there's a lot of them. Um, but in the context of the career, which is what we're talking about, uh, what's worked for me, and it may not work for anybody else. Um, or let me rephrase that. You may have a different version of it.
Mm,
Everybody's got to tweak what I'm about to say uh, to fit. But I've seen officers that, in a effort to protect their spouse from the negative aspects of the job, and we know what law enforcement officers see. So I don't have to dive into that. Your audience knows what's in their emotional garbage can.
yeah.
So if I'm making an effort to try to protect her from some of that, but the result is not protecting her, the result is walling her out of a part of my life,
Hmm.
then that's just not going to go good. It may kick the problem down the road for a year or 2 years or 5 years, but you wind up saying, I spend more time with my deputy chief than I spend with my wife. It's just a fact. If
Yeah,
you discount the amount of time that she and I are in the bedroom together and both of us are asleep,
sure.
you knock that 7 hours out of the 24-hour period out. The amount of face-to-face quality time I spend where I spend more time with my deputy chief.
Hmm.
So if I take the 50 hours a week that's makes me who I am to a certain degree and wall her out of it, it's not going to work. And
Right.
then you're going to start having these resentments, suspicions. Uh, When I walk in the door, she's been married to me 30 years, been with me 35. Can she take one look at me and tell there's something wrong? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. So I walk in and she says, "What's wrong, dear?" Well, I don't want to talk about it right now. I just got through dealing with it for 6 hours.
Mhm.
I look at her and I say, "It's the job, it ain't you. We are good, but I need 2 hours. I
Right.
need to go to the gym. I need to pump some iron, and then to come home and eat a meal. And then tonight, after we watch an episode of The Waltons, I'll tell you. But we're good."
Yeah.
And then her response is, and then we have a nice, relaxing evening and decompress. And when I'm ready to tell her, and certainly I don't throw all the gory details of whatever it was into the mix, but to let her know enough about what's going on in my head where we can do life together.
Mm.
And that's a mistake that I see a lot of officers make. And then they wind up 15 years into their marriage, looking at their wife or husband and go, "I don't even know you. I don't
Yeah.
even know you anymore. Who are you?" And then it's over. I don't know if that sounds like a police chief or a police chief that happens to be a Baptist preacher, but there's a lot of truth to it.
No, I really like that. And I like that you said there's a few things I want to kind of point out, but that statement where people have found themselves in an environment where they don't know their spouse or their kids anymore. I had a conversation on the podcast and they said something very similar to me. They said, I was so afraid to retire because I felt like a stranger in my own home. I didn't know my family anymore. And that's heartbreaking, to hear. And you could hear the heartbreak in his voice when he said that.
I've seen it.
He's like, I don't want to go home. Like like I don't know anything other than this because I put everything into this one thing, into my work life, and I have nothing else in my home life to go home to. And I love that you said do life together. It's this team mentality. And I think that that is so, so important. And, I have a failed marriage and I know what happens when you don't have that team mentality, when you're not communicating with each other, when you're not on the same side. And I love your approach of validating her and letting her know, hey, it's not you, we are good. Because sometimes that's all the other person needs to hear because you don't know, right? And then your mind starts thinking about all these different things of what's wrong, it's me, he's mad at me, or like whatever. So for you to walk in the door and be like, you know what, I had a tough day. It's not you, it's work. We're good. These are the things that I need. And then giving her like something to look forward to. Being like, this is what I need for me right now. But then tonight, I promise you, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. That is amazing communication. And I think a lot of people can learn from that.
Yeah, and in the interest of fairness, honesty, and full disclosure, I didn't wake up yesterday having that answer.
Sure.
If me, we've been married 30 years. If she didn't, for some reason, fight, fight and help teach me how to fight 20, 25 years ago, we wouldn't have got through those learning years. There was a time when I didn't have this stuff figured out. And if she had been a quitter, I wouldn't have that testimony. So, but it's a partnership. It's team. And as we said in our pre-podcast conversations, uh, I don't mean it, anybody that hears me say this and doesn't hear the part two would think I'm just being negative, but I'm being real. Um, I'll give you this example. There's an agency that I'm very familiar with, not this agency, but an agency I'm very familiar with that their deputy chief recently suddenly passed at 53 years old. They filled the deputy chief job.
Mm.
And I look and I just kind of They filled the deputy chief job,
Yeah.
and he was an outstanding police officer, an outstanding commander, a military veteran, and a dear friend of mine. We graduated high school together. And there's no knock on the agency, but he died. And he died young,
Yeah.
and they filled his position. And that guy's doing a great job. And that's not a knock on anybody, but he's not going to be remembered 30 years from now by the department. 30 years from now, and 30 years from now is giving way too much credit. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, he will be an 8 by 10 picture on the wall at
Hmm.
that agency. And the supermajority of that agency will not be able to name the man in the picture. My father's that way. My father's 8 by 10 pictures hanging on the wall at Cedartown PD, and I'm the chief. 80% of my agency don't know who he is.
Yeah.
And that's not negative on him. My mentor that I mentioned earlier started his career in 1966, and he was the chief of Rockmart Police Department. Prior, within like 5 years, he'd make chief. He went from there to the Polk County Police Department, walked in the door as a captain, was chief there for 15 years. Then he went to Polk County Sheriff's Office where he was chief deputy. Get this, if you know anything about rural country politics, he was chief deputy under two consecutive sheriffs with a contested race. Guy runs against the incumbent sheriff, beats him, and keeps his chief deputy. That don't happen much. So then he was chief deputy for those years, and then had 2 terms as sheriff of his own right. Was in law enforcement from 1966 until 2008. I remember him because he was my mentor, and
Yeah.
I was a pallbearer at his funeral. Nobody at the agency that he was sheriff of, chief deputy for 12 years, sheriff for 8, very, very few people that are there now could pick his photo out of a lineup.
Yeah.
So is that negative? No, it's just real that who's going to remember you? Your family. Who's going to be able to pick my picture out of a photo lineup 25 years after I'm dead? My great grandson, not whoever is chief of this police department 25 years after I'm dead. So do the job with that in mind. While I'm here, I'm going to bust my tail for 8, 10 hours a day with every fiber of my being to be the best chief I can be, to be a man of dignity and honor and character. And when I walk out that back door, if they need me, they know how to find me.
Hmm.
But I'm going home. No, that might have been a rant, but I believe it.
No, I really liked it a lot, and there's a lot of truth in it. And I think that sometimes we get so wrapped up in the identity of what we do rather than who we are. And I have experience in my career, which is obviously different than your career, but I did something very similar. When I was younger, I prioritized my career over my family, and it's one of the biggest regrets I have to this day because I lost that family, like I remember, and I'll kind of give you maybe a specific example, but I was climbing up in my career. I was hitting these milestones that were important to me. And I think that two things can be true at once. Like you said, you can put everything into your career and you can also prioritize your family. Those things can be true at one time. But at that time in my life, I didn't know how to balance that. I was like, it's all or nothing in this one aspect of my life. And in that time, it was my career. And I was headlining in this big event, and my grandma was very sick in the hospital in Texas. And I flew out there and, kind of had my like finals with her. And I should have stayed, I should have stayed and I should have been there longer, but they were like, "Oh, she seems like she's getting better and she seems like she's going to be okay." And I was like, "Well, I gotta go. I gotta go." I just remember the whole time I was there, instead of being present and being there with my family, I was like, "I gotta go to work." Like there's no way that they can survive without me. Like it's going to be devastating if I'm not there. And I left and she passed. And in hindsight, that event was so insignificant. It wasn't important at all. Life would have gone on. They would have been okay without me. But my grandma asked for me. She's like, "Where's Paige?" And I wasn't there. And I think that sometimes it takes us learning that. Sometimes it takes that perspective, like you said, seeing your mentor or the picture of your father on the wall and like having that understanding as you get older that there are things that are going to be more important in your life than taking that extra shift or, being whatever title it is. Even though that's also important and valuable. Like what you do and how you contribute to the organization is also valuable. But there are a lot of things I would have done differently, now with the knowledge that I have. And so I can relate to that concept. And my question for you is, what message as a leader do you share with your team? Like, do you talk about these things? Is there um, a way that you teach balance, so that they know that it's okay to like go home and be dad or son or wife or husband, what is it that you guys teach so that the younger generation can learn from you and your perspectives?
Well, I think that most sermons are best seen instead of heard.
Mm,
So, Paige, I had one of my young supervisors laughing and cutting up around the office not too long ago. And she looked at me and said, "Chief, got a question for you." I said, "Well, what's that, Katie?" And she said, what percentage of the police department was not born when you started policing?
oh my
And I said, well, there you go. Yeah. And then I answered the question, and it was better than half of them.
God.
But while we laugh and cut up, we know when we can sit around the break room and laugh and cut up. We know when it's time to get to business. For the most part, most of them look at me like, he's the old fart. And that's fine. That is perfectly fine. I am the old fart. So giving them a lecture, most of them don't want to hear, but hearing that one of them has his or her second grader getting its awards program at the end of the 9 weeks of school, and their awards program is at 11 o'clock this morning, and me walking by him in the hallway and saying, "It's 10:45. Why are you not at such and so?" And him look at me and I say, "Get your butt down there to your son's award program. And if a call comes in, me or the captain," I go, "I'm wearing a badge and a gun. I can answer a loud music call. Get to your kid's award program."
Yeah.
And they know I mean that. Um, One of them comes in and's got a sick kid, or dad's having chest pains, and the examples are endless. Uh, just letting them know that they mean more to you than a badge number and employee ID number. That there's a human being. If we know that we're human beings behind the chief or the deputy chief or the major badge, well, your 25-year-old patrol officer is too.
Yeah.
So let's value them as human beings and let them know that we do.
Well, I would imagine that by having that kind of support too, it takes the pressure off of everyone within the organization to understand that like they're supported, they feel valued, they feel supported, and they don't feel like they have to be there or else. There's that permission to go and do those things. And I would imagine that that helps with overall stress and wellness too, because it's incredibly stressful when you feel like you're being pulled in two directions and that you have to be at work and there's absolutely no way that you can be at your kid's award ceremony because leadership doesn't support it. And to have,
Right.
a culture where leadership is like, why are you here? Get your butt over there. Like, I got you. Just immediately takes that pressure off and reduces that
Yeah.
stress.
And they understand if we have an acute event that
Mm.
I have got to have you, you've got a radio. Keep that radio on your shoulder where you can hear it. And if I've got an emergency and I need you, I'll call you.
Yeah.
But you can go 30 minutes over there and the only awards program that your kid's going to remember is the one you weren't at.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm. Well, and I know that everyone wants to feel successful and everyone wants to feel successful at work, but everyone also wants to feel successful at home. No one, and to be fair, I'm not a parent yet. I hope to be one day. But I would imagine that there isn't anyone who has a child who says like, I want to fail at being a parent. Everyone wants to be successful. And so having the permission to be successful in both is huge.
yeah, absolutely. And something also we talked about the operative aspect of that, but so much of that is based on where you prioritize things, not only prioritizing family, prioritizing the job when it's its turn,
Hmm. Right.
because I'm not here worrying about what trauma I've got to deal with, other drama, trauma, BS, whatever you want to call it. I know that unless there's some great thing happening right now that I don't know about, my wife's looking forward to spending the evening with me and vice versa. And so I'm going to leave here, I'm going to go home. So I'm not dreading going home. So my mind is here.
Yeah.
And, everybody doesn't have that benefit. And there's somebody watching this right now going, yeah, well, it's easy for you to say that. You don't know what I'm dealing with. You're right. I don't. But if we have the ability to control it and to do those things necessary to make that happen, there's a famous football coach one time that said everybody wants to be a winner. But do they want to do the things that winners have to do that made them winners?
Yep. Yeah. You know what? I'm smiling because everything that you say, like, I'm so on board with this and like very similar mindset. I've had very similar conversations with people in my life before, who will look at me and be like, I want that. Like, I want what you have. And I'm
What
like,
are you doing to get there?
yeah. And I'm like, well, you can. I'm like, these are the things that you have to do to get there. And they're like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. And I think that the question is always, how bad do you want it? What is the why?
Hmm.
And if you want it bad enough and the why is strong enough, then the steps that it takes to get there become more possible. And it's, one step in front of the other. I think anyone who's going to sit here and say, well, you don't know what I'm going through and I can't do that. I think that the question should be, or the statement should be, you don't know what I'm going through, because that might be true. Like you said, it might be true. Like other people have harder or, different things going on. But it's, what can I do to get there?
Hmm.
What are the steps that I can take to make this better? And I think that sometimes we get in our own way with things. And
Yeah.
I I think when the why is strong enough, the how and the what becomes a lot easier. Um,
Well, there's I mentioned that I also pastor a church, and that's a fine line to walk. A lot of times my phone rings from somebody and I say, who are you calling? What hat do I need to put on?
yeah.
with an understanding that you asked me to put on pastor hat, you may say something that instantly makes me have to put on police hat.
Mm.
It's a fine line to walk. But what you're saying too, that I have a lady in my church that her daughter was murdered by her husband.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, what's the point? When she comes to me to help her, I cannot help her from a position of experience.
Yeah.
I'm not a woman that has had my daughter murdered by my son-in-law. So there's no way I can come at her from a knowing what she's going through standpoint.
Right.
But that does not mean I can't help
Hmm.
her. I just can't help her from experience.
Right.
And do we have officers under our chain of command, or do I have a brother or a sister leader in law enforcement that no, I don't know what you're going through. I have never walked your mile, but I can help you walk your mile.
Yeah.
Might have to come at them from humility because I've never been there. But that don't mean we can't help each other.
I like that a lot. I really liked what you said earlier about how everything is interconnected and you have to take care of yourself if you want to take care of others, right? This like old sentiment, like you said, the oxygen mask and all the things, but the more you can prioritize your own wellness, your own physical wellness, the more that you can focus on your own stress management, your home life impacts your wellness. If you go home and
Yes.
everything is in shambles, the idea that you're going to be able to leave that at home and go to work becomes less realistic, right? Because you have all this stuff going on. But if you can create a healthier home environment, then mentally you're going to feel better, right? And then the same would go with organizationally. If you guys can create a culture organizationally that supports people and, kind of takes some of that stress off. And you said this earlier, kind of like control the controllable. Right? Like you can't control everything, but there are certain things that you can control within your organization and within your life, and it's all interconnected. And so I really appreciate you touching on that piece of it of like, hey, like number one, you got to be good. Like if you want to be the best husband, wife, leader, the best person to serve your community, you have to take care of you. And home life is a part of that. And how can you prioritize that as much as you can so that, everything when you're at work is at work? Because I would imagine you can't, like that stuff comes with you a little bit sometimes. But one of the things that you talked about
Sure.
offline, one of the things you talked about offline that I thought was also really interesting was this idea of community engagement and interacting with your community in a positive way and building trust and relationships within the community to also impact wellness. Can you talk a little bit about the strategies that you guys have and why you think community engagement is so important?
Yeah, and I think it's very important, particularly for me, because I'm 53 years old with 35 years of policing in the town that I grew up in. I mean, I'm at Cedartown Police Department and I graduated from Cedartown High School, a town of 10,000 people that my great grandfather owned a business in this town. So, yeah, people might know me. And by I stay active in the community so that I can see people. Well, number one, I just enjoy it, but that I can see and interact with people when I'm not being the police chief.
Mm.
Uh, I'm a baseball guy. I played baseball when I was in high school. My son did too. Uh, Me and my wife were booster club presidents when he was in high school, and I call play by play on our local radio station. Small town America, folks. That the local radio station does play by play for every baseball, basketball, football, uh, and softball game that Cedartown High School plays. So I do play by play for a couple of sports. People hear my voice when I'm not doing a public service announcement about a tragedy. I'm at Cedartown High School sporting events. Sometimes I'm there in my capacity as police chief in a uniform. Sometimes I'm there in a Go Dogs, Cedartown Bulldogs t-shirt because I'm on the radio station. And people, my wife is a retired teacher, and something that I observed, Paige, was first grade students would walk in there on day one and look around the classroom. And some kid would say, "Where do you sleep?" Because this kid can't see that there's Leanne and then there's Mrs. Newsome, the first grade teacher, concurrently, but she's got a life outside of the school. Same thing with me. But we got a town of 10,000 people. You say my name, the first thing that pops to people's mind is, well, he's the police chief. But they also saw me at the high school football game where we talked about, I was in a t-shirt and we talked about the Bulldogs.
Mhm.
I'm active in fraternal organizations, the Masonic Lodge, the Kiwanis Club, where I might encounter you because we are selling you a 10-pound bag of onions. Those types of things. I'm active in my church. So, but you also have to be ready that the guy's going to approach you in the grocery store because he wants to talk to you about the prowler he thought he had 2 nights ago that he didn't call 911.
Mhm.
And I know that.
Yeah.
And I welcome that, but I'm approachable. I hope people are hearing what I'm saying, that when the bad thing does happen and they have to see my face in that capacity, they've seen my face in another capacity.
Yeah.
And they know that I'm a husband and a father. And I was at the girls softball game on the radio station, and that I bleed red blood just like you do, and I love our little town just like you do. And if I tell you it's raining, you better take your umbrella because I'm not pulling your leg. And that support you get from the community because they trust you is
Yeah.
typically not built on a traffic stop.
Yeah.
It's built at a parade.
Yeah. And, we talked about this a little bit too. And I would imagine that walking into a community where people trust you and support you and come up and shake your hand and look you in the eye and they know your name feels a whole lot better than working in a community where you don't have that and how that impacts your wellness. I've talked to a lot of organizations that struggle with that, and of course, maybe the bigger the area, the harder it is to reach everybody.
Sure
I
it is.
would understand that, but there are a lot of communities that do not trust the police and do not support the police. And I know how that impacts the morale and the productivity of the officers, where all they feel like they're doing is, you know, dealing with negativity and backlash every day. They don't have those positive encounters with the community on a day-to-day basis. And I know a lot of organizations are really trying to focus on how can we build that? How can we create that trust? And how can we make sure that people understand that we're here for them and like we do care about them and we are people. And one of the things that you said to me that I don't know if you meant it this way, but I took it this way. In doing that and being in the community, not only does the community see you as a person, but you see them as people. And that is the first time that that's popped in my head in this context of community policing, because the amount of empathy and the work and the job that you want to do for someone when you see them as a person rather than just another call, just another traffic stop.
Another person that, and he's passed away some time ago, was a gentleman named Larry Odom that was city commissioner for the city of Cedartown for many, many years, retired colonel. from the United States Air Force, a very seasoned leader. Something he told me many, many years ago is he said, Jamie, 3% of the people you deal with are going to be criminals. 97% of the people you deal with are going to be customers. Govern yourself accordingly.
Hmm.
And that really stuck with me what I tell young officers is this, and if I'll try not to be too long-winded. Brevity is not my strong suit. Uh, but it's what I try to tell young officers. You've done 30 rec reports in the last 60 days, just yourself. But there's this 72-year-old lady that's about to have a non-injury fender bender wreck at the main intersection in town right at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. She's never in her life called 911. She's never in her life had an interaction with a law enforcement officer in his official capacity. She's seen him at the parade, at the fair, at the ball game. She's waved at you at a stop sign, but she's never been dealing with a cop in his official capacity. And now she's about to have a non-injury fender bender wreck, and she's going to form her entire opinion of the police department. And because we're the most visible employees of the city of Cedartown, she's going to form her entire opinion of the city as an organization based upon a 5-minute visit with you.
Hmm. Yeah.
What you going to do with that?
Yeah.
You've got an opportunity to create so much good. You got an opportunity to put so much goodwill in the bank
Hmm.
that costs you nothing. Just love on that lady for a minute. Be sweet to her, be polite to her. Yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. Smile at her. Costs you nothing.
Yeah.
And then the day when you need an ambassador, she'll be your ambassador. What are you going to do with that opportunity? And I think there's 1,000 different examples of how that lesson applies. It's the it's your 60th wreck in the last 2 months, and it's her first in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So to you, it's nothing. To you, it's just Tuesday. But to her, it's this life altering event that she's really traumatized by.
I think it's, how can you teach that? How can you teach self-awareness? How can you teach empathy? And I also think sometimes, to your point, we forget the power that we have to influence someone's day. Um,
Yes, we do.
that could be in a negative or a positive way, and that is something we can control.
And
And
so much of it, Paige, if I can interject here,
yeah,
is choice
yep.
and it's awareness. Last night, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I'm just saying. Last night I was at the county fair. And so for you big city folks that are watching this, yeah, there are places that still have the county fair. And so I was at the county fair last night. I was at the cattle show at the county fair, and I'm looking. I'm in a uniform, full gear, external vest carrier. If you don't see chief on my little pin, I just look like everybody else. And but I'm alert. I'm looking around, and I see this boy about 3 years old in a stroller, and he's not looking at anything but me. He is just zoned in on me. So what did I do? I went over there and I spent a few minutes with him, and it was sincere. Um, did his mama like it? Well, sure. Did I buy uh, uh, goodwill with her? Yep. His daddy? Yep. Grandma that was sitting there? Yeah. But my loving on that little boy was sincere. And
Mm.
if it bought some public goodwill, that's great. But it cost me nothing. And that little boy, now he's 3, he won't remember it in 5 years, but by gosh, it made his night.
Yeah.
And how many opportunities do we have to do that?
Yeah.
Go.
No, it's the same thing. I think One thing that I've had to learn is this idea that you have control over that, right? You get to choose how you show up. And you could be having a hard day. You know, to your point, that example, maybe you had a tough day and you still chose to walk over and spread light and love and positivity. And we all have that choice. And I had, and I've shared this before because it was really instrumental for me. I was having a day and I was super negative and reactive. And I remember someone who I care about deeply, that's in my corner, that wants me to win, looked me in the eye and said, listen, you're not acting really great right now. And I understand that you're not happy with what's happening, but you do have control over your actions and your reactions. That is one thing that you can control. And it was this like whoa moment for me. And I needed that. I needed someone to put me in my place and be like, you know what? Like, you can choose to show up right now and be super negative and not care about anybody else and just be in your own way, or you can choose to be positive and to move forward. And I think that we forget that sometimes, that like as hard as things can be, we can still smile at someone. We can still show kindness. We can still make someone's day in a positive way. And sometimes by doing that, even if it's like you're initially forcing yourself, like sometimes you're like, oh, like it's a hard day, but like I'm going to choose to not be mean to people or rude to people. I'm going to walk through this grocery store and I'm going to smile at people, even though I'm having a hard day. That in turn makes your day better, you know? And
Yes.
so I think we forget that. I think we forget the power that we hold within ourselves.
Yes, and so much of it, and I do try to teach this one that this it's a lot of it's younger officers, but some of the old heads still fall prey to it as well. That I go, how he is talking to you speaks to his character.
Yep.
How you deal with it is what speaks to your character. So we have the last action. If that requires allowing him to have the last word, keep running your mouth. Um, I tell people around here, I've never in my life gotten in trouble for the thought that I arrested before it became a word. Never got in trouble for that one. But I have oftentimes got in trouble for not arresting it. And as we say in the country, got diarrhea of the mouth.
Yep.
And after you say, oh, did I say that?
Yep.
Well, yep, you did. And
Yeah.
then in law enforcement today, everything's on body cam now. I mean, did I say things to people when I was a 23-year-old police officer and lose my temper that a young guy now is going to get in trouble for? But there wasn't a body cam when I was 23. Yeah. And I'm not defending it. I'm not saying it was right. I'm just saying the standard is the standard. Just like, when I was in high school, did I do things when I was in high school that whether I got caught or didn't get caught, that nobody was doing this
Right.
and then putting it on social media. So, and that also, why do I go that route? Does that also add to the stress
Yeah, I think so.
that a lot of conversations we have with people, we're having to think, am I being set up? Am I being goaded into this because somebody wants to? And it happens less in a small town than it happens maybe in the big city, but only less because it's uh, a smaller group of people. We got a town of 10,000 people. So there's, but it's about the same ratio. And in our little town, we've still got great support from the people, but the cop haters are just as loud here as there are anywhere else. There's just fewer of them.
Yeah. I would say that it is more stressful, but I also think that it requires more. of that emotional regulation, to your point of like, I used to call it the power of the pause, and then I had someone say it's a tactical pause. And I think if you just put tactical in front of anything, like people like understand it, but
Mhm.
it's like you said, like, can you pause before responding? Or can you pause and decide how you want to respond? And maybe that's not responding at all. Like you said, maybe that's just letting them have it. And that takes
Certain things people
effort.
say don't require any comment from me, no matter how ridiculous.
Yeah. But I think it takes a lot of practice and maturity to be able to do that. To your point, when I was really young, I was super emotionally reactive. You said something and it was immediate. There was no filter whatsoever. And to your point, I was digging myself out of a lot of holes back then. But I also didn't have social media till I was in college, like things were different. And now I think I'm not saying don't be authentic. Um, or only act a certain way because you think you're being recorded. But I think the idea is how can you train emotional regulation in yourself so that you can decide in that moment when things are heightened how you want to respond in that situation. And I think that that's really important. I did see this thing on social media, but I'll tell you, I thought this was really funny. It was a guy who they asked him the secret to a long marriage. And he said, I don't say the first or the second thing that comes to mind. And I thought that was really funny and cute the way he said it, but it's the same concept. Like maybe you don't have to say the first or second thing that comes to mind. Maybe you can pause and then, kind of sift around in your head for a second and come up with something that you're not going to regret later.
Well, and it's important in a leadership position. And certainly I've not always, as the Apostle Paul said, not as though I've already apprehended, but this one thing I do, I press towards the mark. Now, he was talking about his faith, but where I'm going is, look, I've not always succeeded, but I know what direction I'm pressing at.
Yep.
Uh, if your subordinate officers are seeing emotional responses in you, Mr. and Ms. Leader, executive officer of an agency, are you rock solid? Are you emotionally stabilized? Or do you fly off the handle in either frustration or anger or whatever it is? Do you quote unquote lose it?
Yeah.
So what lesson are we teaching? Um, and back to our original conversation, every aspect of our life plays into being able to do that, whether it's at work or with your friends or at home with your wife or interacting with your kids. All of those things are opportunities for us to demonstrate self-control and demonstrate that, you know, we can govern ourselves with dignity and honor and not lose it. And the more all of those aspects are balanced, then the more we're able to navigate all of those situations.
Yeah. I agree. And I think
Purposefully, you said tactically, and that's where
tactically,
we're going, that we're doing
purposely,
it on purpose. We're making a
100%.
choice to do
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the idea of like leading by example. And you said that earlier too, that it's not what you say, it's how you live and it's what you do that matters because people are watching, they're watching us, and
And
whether
they've got a right to.
yeah, and whether you and like you said, it could be in different contexts. Like your kids are watching you, your friends and family are watching you, in your context, your community, your team within your organization, they're looking up to you and they're watching you. And so, how do you want to lead by example? How do you want to show the world, that that you are, and in turn people are going to want to be that way. No one wants to be around someone who's thoughtful and intentional and kind and positive and holds themselves to a higher standard. No one wants to not be that, like in your company. Like by you being that, I want to be that. I want to be better. I want those qualities too. And so I think that there's a lot of power and strength in you leading by example, whoever's listening, leading by example in your life, and other people will look up to that. I know that we're running a little bit short on time and I could talk to you forever. And you've already given a ton.
Yeah, I could sit here and chit chat with you about this for
I know.
hours.
I know. You've already given a ton of really, really good advice to the younger generation, but I have to ask the question, what words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Take the job seriously. Take yourself seriously. Um, and I could go all day on that. And there's many different ways you could turn that. But take the job seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. I'm just Jamie, that's the son of Jimmy and Nancy, that's the husband of Leanne and the dad of Casey and Joanna, that was fortunate enough to be the guy that got selected to do this job. They could have found a better one. There was one that had it before me, and somebody will have it after me. And right now, I'm the current steward of the mission. So I take that serious, but I'm just a guy like everybody else. Don't take yourself seriously. Go home at the end of the day and have fun, because I never realized how fast being the old rat at the barn would get here. I never realized that. I mean, I remember vividly my first day as a jailer at Polk County Sheriff's Office, walking in that door, big eyed, I've got a badge. And that was 35 years ago. And it was
Yeah.
so stop and smell the roses to the young officer. If there's any advice I have, and I mean it with all sincerity, um, if you go, well, I'm 23 years old and I can't wait till I'm 25 because when I'm 25, this is going to happen. And then I've just made corporal and I can't wait because if I do this, I do this, I make sergeant. And then when my kids are little, man, I can't wait till he gets out of diapers. And then, he gets out of diapers, can't wait till he goes to school. And we just were always waiting for the next thing. Then we're going to look in the mirror one day and say, who's that old man staring back at me and how did he get here so fast?
Yeah.
So love love today because we're not promised tomorrow.
Thank you. Chief Newsome, it was honestly an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate you coming here and again, I could talk to you forever. You're so well spoken and I love your mindset and I really appreciate you sharing that with me and our listeners today.
Thanks for having me. I don't know how you found a police chief of a town of 10,000 people, 3,000 miles away, but I'm glad you did. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.